The content, views, and opinions expressed in the following program are those of the producer and do not necessarily reflect the view and opinions of the City of Bremerton, BCAT, their officials, or their employees.
Hi, my name is Phil Colcord, and I'm president of Fraternal Order Police Evergreen Lodge 1 here in Kitsap County, and this is our outreach program. Today our guest speaker is Tim Alexander. He's National Service Officer Supervisor with DAV. Welcome aboard, and it's good having you here, Tim. Can you tell us a little about yourself?
Yes, sir. Thank you. I appreciate you giving us this opportunity to come out today. My name is Tim Alexander. I've worked for DAV since February of 2020. I started out in our Chicago office, and then I got promoted to the assistant supervisor position in our Philadelphia office in 2022. And then in October of 2023, I came out to take charge of the Seattle office.
Mm-hmm. So how's that been for you? Busy?
Yes, sir. We are always busy. There's never enough hours in the day.
How big is your staff?
I have a total of 4 national service officers and then 3 transition service officers. And what the transition service officers, they work with the active duty military on their initial VA disability compensation claim as they're getting ready to get out of the service.
Okay. Can you tell us, what does DAV stand for?
The Disabled American Veterans.
Disabled
American Veterans. Yes, sir.
Okay. And what kind of services does DMV offer?
DAV here in the Seattle area, we will provide assistance for veterans, their dependents, and surviving spouses when it comes to filing disability claims, pension claims, survivor benefits. On a national level, we have an employment program that works with recruitmilitary.com to help veterans and their spouses find employment. We have a volunteer program. We're always looking for volunteers to help out veterans and their surviving spouses in the local community. We also have an entrepreneur program called Patriot Boot Camp, where if there is a veteran who's wanting to start a business or has an invention idea, they are partnered with other veterans who have already been through the process of starting a business or, launching some type of product.
Okay. When you talk of disabled veterans, are you speaking of veterans that got disabled in their military duty, or all veterans that end up disabled from one thing or another?
We are referring to veterans that had an injury or illness while they were on active duty, or if they served in certain parts of the world during certain eras of time. There are what's called presumptive conditions due to toxic exposure, such as Agent Orange or the burn pit legislation that was signed into law about 2.5 years ago.
Okay. And correct me if I'm wrong. I belong to American Legion Post here in Paulsbo, and we have a service officer that handles VA stuff. These people are volunteers, but they work with you guys. Is that how it works?
For DAV, we have what's called department and chapter service officers. They are volunteers. They do work with us. We have one chapter here in Bremerton, Chapter 5. We have chapters throughout the state. And what they do, they help the veterans or surviving spouses complete the forms and the applications for whatever they're applying for. And then they send them to my office, and we review them before they're submitted to the VA for processing.
And then after you review them, and if they're in order, you pass them on to what office?
They are then submitted directly to the Department of Veterans Affairs to begin any development that may be needed. In the case of disability for a veteran, they will go through that veteran's military records. They'll go through all their current medical records, and if any type of examination is needed, they will schedule that exam for them.
And is that in D.C. that happens, or is that
it's
locally?
Here locally?
Okay.
Yes, sir.
That's part of your function. You have a group that handles that.
Well, it goes to the Department of Veterans Affairs. We submit all of the applications directly to them. The majority of them are worked here in the Seattle regional office, the Seattle VA regional office. But if this office here in Seattle is at or above its quota per se, they do send them to other regional offices throughout the country to try to work the claims as quickly as possible.
Okay. And, okay, so if I'm understand this correctly, DAV, and the stuff you review is sent to another department within the system that handles it. Would you say Veterans Administration?
Yes, sir. It goes to the Veterans Administration. We are not part of the Veterans Administration. We are our own entity. We are like the middleman in between the veteran and the VA. When a veteran or surviving spouse, chooses to have DAV work with them, we work with them from the beginning, and we can work their claim all the way up through the Board of Veterans Appeals.
Okay. So, we'll get into that. What is basic elements, requirements to fill a disability claim?
There's two ways that we can go about this. If a veteran had a documented injury or illness while they were in service, they still have the condition today, and they're being treated for it. That's the first way. The second way is if the veteran has what's called a presumptive condition. For the Vietnam veterans, there are 23 conditions that are presumed due to herbicide exposure for Vietnam. For Marines who were stationed at Camp Lejeune between 1953 and 1985, there are 8 cancers that are presumed due to the contaminated water at Camp Lejeune. And then most recently in August of 2022, the President signed the PACT Act into law, which that has numerous cancers and other respiratory conditions for veterans who deployed to either the Gulf War back in 1990-91 or Iraq and Afghanistan and has one of those conditions. And they don't have to prove, if it's a presumptive condition, they were in during the right period of service and they were in one of the presumptive locations, they do not have to prove that it's because of their service. And an example of that, Vietnam veteran, say they came home in 1969, they developed diabetes today. That's one of the conditions that is presumed due to herbicide exposure in Vietnam.
Okay. Well, that's a good thing too, because it makes it easier, I would think, for some of these veterans to get the help they need.
Yes, sir. Yes, it does.
Okay, so you kind of answered this, but let's elaborate on it. The PAC Act and or other presumptive services period, the presumption period, impact filing the disability claim. Expedited, I would think, right?
They don't expedite it, but what they do, it takes out the element of having to have the injury or the illness while you were on active duty.
Okay. Well, that would be a big help then, I would suppose.
Oh, yes, sir.
What are some of the myths and misunderstandings throughout the veteran community regarding filling out disability claims?
One of the biggest things is, as you know, as we age, we all start to have health problems. And a veteran will think, oh, I've got a bad back today. I was in the military 40 years ago. And the back injury that I have today is because of the, 40 years ago in service. So for that veteran to have a chance of getting that claim granted, approved in his or her favor, they would need a diagnosed condition today, and then for a doctor to state that at least it's a 50% chance whatever's going on with their back is because of their service and why they think that is the case. And then another huge myth with law enforcement and first responders is they feel if they have some type of mental health disability, they're seeking care and treatment for it, they're diagnosed with it, they put in a claim, they think that that could impact their jobs. And, we deal with them frequently here. When I was in our office in Chicago, we started out with a small group of first responders, and that group got to be about 100 of them by the time we left, just sitting down and talking to them and telling them, unless you disclose it or there's an incident where your records have to be subpoenaed, what is going on with your health as far as your service and any disabilities related to your service, nobody can get access to that.
Okay, so basically, it's kind of hard to prove some of this, especially psychological and mental issues, came from the service if it's 30, 40 years later and they didn't have a problem, right?
Not necessarily. Let's say you had a veteran that did one tour to Vietnam. They were, they have a Purple Heart. They have a combat infantry badge. That proves they were in combat. That proves that it was there. And a lot of veterans, whether if they were drafted in Vietnam and did 1 year, or if they did a career, they put it in the back of their mind, they buried it.
Mm-hmm.
They get out, they work civilian jobs, a lot of them get married, have families, they're busy with life, it's buried. We see a lot of Vietnam veterans who do not start to realize that they have mental health issues until after they've retired. Because by that point, they've been married 30 plus years, the kids are grown and gone, you're retired, and all those, everything that you had buried in the back of your mind has time to come out.
Yeah. Well, I think especially in war, they're trained to suck it up and move forward.
Yes, sir, they are.
I can see that happening. The part that's good to know is that if they served in a certain area or a certain function that causes stress, extreme stress, they could have that position. That kind of separates the people that worked a desk in the United States and never went over there to any foreign country. They still may end up with some problems, but I think it'd be a lot harder to prove, wouldn't it?
To a degree, but let's say there was someone that was, as you put it, working a desk here in the United States and never, was in combat, but they were out doing some type of training exercise, saw someone get killed or seriously injured, or, they could be a victim of military sexual assault, rape, sexual harassment, whatever the case may be, that they've buried for all these years. So there are a lot of nuances and, possible routes to get mental health service connected for veterans who do not have.
That's good that people know that. So they, because I think a lot of people would just write it off now and say, well, I didn't do anything then and it's bothering me now, but it's a lot of water under the bridge. And they won't even try to fix it.
That or another line we hear a lot from veterans when we finally talk to them is, well, I have all my body parts, I'm fine, nothing's wrong with me, somebody else needs the money more than me. Mm-hmm. The Department of Veterans Affairs is not going to stop printing money, they're not going to stop paying benefits, and they're not going to go to the other disabled veterans and say, hey, this person, we're going to give them $100 a month, so we need to take $10 out of yours to give to them. That's not going to happen. Mm-hmm. Any veteran that served their country that has an injury or illness related to their service, it should be filing claims.
Let me throw another myth in there that I don't think you put in here, but a lot of veterans think that the DAV is a filter to prevent them from getting things instead of helping them. And sometimes it's built on just what they hear from some peers that got turned down. Mm-hmm. And I think from the way you stand and the people working for you, you're dedicated to getting them help, not denying their claims. Isn't that correct?
That is correct. The DAV mission statement is to empower veterans to lead high-quality lives with respect and dignity. And we will work with, our job is not to deter you. Now, sometimes we'll have a veteran come in that'll want to claim a certain condition, and we'll tell them, okay, here's what, you need to work on. This is what we need to put this claim forward. And, they may get upset and say, oh, well, you guys don't want to help me. Well, yes, sir, yes, ma'am, we do. But we are bound by the laws and regulations set forth by Congress as to what is and is not a claim. A veteran can file a claim for anything. but we try to set them up for success, letting them know, this is what experience tells us. And we will never guarantee a veteran will get any type of disability granted, but we are going to ask the veteran to help us help them to put the best possible claim out there.
Mm-hmm. And you're basically what we said being, you're the crutch or the tools that the veteran uses to get the paperwork to the Disability Administration.
Well, yes, sir, and to help them fill out the forms, because a lot of the forms are confusing, regardless of if you're in your 20s or if you're in your 80s. A lot of the forms are confusing, and if a veteran fills out a form incorrectly and sends it to the VA, to the Department of Veterans Affairs, 30, 60 days later, the Veterans Affairs will send the veteran a letter saying you did this wrong. The veteran's going to get discouraged.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I can understand that. And the DAV, do you conduct informal seminars or claim clinics to help veterans?
Yes, sir. We are more than happy to go to any group to do any type of informational seminars, let them know who DAV is, the services that we offer, do disabilities claims for them. The only thing that we ask is that we can get at least 6 weeks notice, and the reason for that is once we get it scheduled, our national headquarters in Washington, D.C. gets with the VA and gets addresses for all of the veterans within 25 miles of wherever that seminar is going to be held, and they mail them out postcards saying, we're doing an informational seminar claims clinic on this day at this location. Please come join us.
And what the group that requests that,
Mm-hmm.
Do they need a certain amount of space, or do they have to? Is there any limits put on what they can do?
Ideally, they would want, some type of meeting hall or a location just to be able to hold all the people. Mm-hmm. But there are no, other limitations on it. We all have laptops that we bring with us. We have mobile hotspots. So all we would need would be a place to plug stuff in and meet with the veterans.
Yeah. I'm probably speaking out of term here, but fire departments would be a good place to have that. And I know they do rent out or let different organizations use them for different things. We've used it for FOP meetings before when we didn't have a place. That would be one of the places I'd check if I want to do that, I think.
Okay.
How does DAV assist surviving spouses and dependents?
For the surviving spouses, there's a couple of different avenues that they can pursue for possible monetary compensation through the VA. One of them is called the Dependency Indemnity Compensation, or a DIC claim. And what that means is if their veteran was 100% service-connected for at least 10 years, or if they passed away from a service-connected disability, if that's listed as a primary or contributing factor on their death certificate, more than likely they're entitled to that DIC benefit, and we would help them apply for that. The other thing that a surviving spouse can apply for is what's called a survivor's pension. Now that is an income and assets needs-based program. So basically if the surviving spouse, if they have a large amount of assets or income coming in every month, they would not qualify for that program. And then both with them and the dependents, we assist with processing the application for burial allowance, grave markers, presidential memorial certificates. There's numerous benefits out there for surviving spouses and dependents.
Okay. What about programs for veterans aid for assisted living?
If a veteran is receiving disability compensation or a veteran's pension, and they need assistance with activities of daily living, such as bathing, dressing, medication management, they can apply for it's called the aid and attendance benefit, and it basically gives them extra money every month to help cover the costs of the expenses for assisted living or a nursing home.
Okay, thank you. We're getting close in time here. Has DAV experienced a disruption in services due to understaffing or under budget?
No. Fortunately, DAV does not get any funds from local, state, or the federal government. All of our funding comes from corporate and private donors. So we're not affected by anything that has or is currently going on in the country.
Okay, well, that's good. Good to know. What's the most effective way to contact DAV in Seattle office?
The most effective way is by our email address. We do have a phone number, but I only have one phone line coming in, and we get hundreds of calls a day. So the best way to get a hold of us is by our email address, which is dav.vbasea@va.gov.
Okay, thank you. I'll make sure it gets on our website too.
Appreciate that.
Okay, is there anything else that you'd like to add before we finish?
Just one last thing, whether it's help with a claim or any of the other services that we provide, DAV does not charge for any of our services. They're free for the veterans, their dependents, and surviving spouses.
Let me ask another question. Just the volunteers that work for you that work for the vets, really. They, to me, it seems like they're very important to your staff success. Isn't that correct?
Yes, I consider them, they're my frontline soldiers. They are out there, in the communities, in the middle of the state, on the other side of the state. So yes, they get to the veterans before we do.
And I think, correct me if I'm wrong, is that these volunteers, if they have a question and they're working on some veterans' papers, and they have a question, a lot of them will contact you or your staff to get an answer so they can give it to the person or help correct the papers before they get to you.
That is correct. They are trained, and then every year, and that is one thing that we continually tell them, when in doubt, call us, because we do not want you looking bad, and which in turn makes your local chapter look bad and the organization look bad. We would rather one of the volunteers, call or email us 15 times with one person sitting in front of them, as opposed to doing something wrong.
Well, that's how I got a hold of you, really, is through one of those volunteers. And he responded right away, got a hold of you, and then you got a hold of me, and we went right, and it worked. So,
yes,
yeah, it's a good system I think you have. And I think, I know a lot of people do use it. I think a lot more need to be educated so they can get it if they need it, and it's available. So thank you that we have you there and working, and your staff too. And if you ever want to put on another show, give me a call. And even if it's something that you want to educate the public on, let us know, and we'll get you on as soon as we can.
I most definitely appreciate it, and I appreciate you inviting me out here today.
Well, I appreciate you coming. Hang on for 1 second here. I got to say goodbye to everybody. So thank you, folks, for coming. I hope this was educational to you. And if you have a person that needs, that's a veteran that needs assistance with one of the trauma in life from his service or illness, contact the VA. Like I say, you can go through one of the volunteers at, I know the VFW have it, the American Legion have it, and there's other groups around that also have VA assistants that assist Tim here. Thank you for your time, and we'll see you again on another show. Have a great day and stay safe out there.